Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's regular meeting of the Weirville Town Council on July 25th, 2022. We'll actually start this evening with a public hearing on implement for outdoor lighting regulations. James, do you have any people sign up to speak on this item?
We have not, but while I'm here, the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to amend the town's outdoor lighting regulations. This is going before the planning board. You have a unanimous recommendation from the planning board as it relates to these proposed code amendments. And perhaps during the action item, I can describe further if it pleases the council.
No one to talk about this item, and we've talked about it before. Are there any questions or concerns you all have for the planning director? Seeing none, then I have adjourn the public hearing. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. And I think we're all here in person tonight, so that avoids the roll call. Thank you. The next item up is our approval and adjustment to the agenda. You've had an opportunity to review the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda the council want to make? And if not, if I can have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Next is our consent agenda, and Coffee, would you go through the items that you might consent agenda, please?
Yes, very good evening to all of you. Beginning on page 8, you have the first item in the agenda, consent agenda, and that is the minutes for Monday, June 20th. Following that, you have page 10, minutes for Tuesday, June 21st. On page 12, you have minutes for Monday, June 27th. Following that, on page 17, you have the monthly tax report for the month of June, ending out the year at 99.84% with $6,000, $6,085 left to be collected. On page 22, you have page 22 and 23, you have a budget amendment for community center recreation complex, adding $96 in donations. On page 24, you have a budget amendment for reappropriations, and that goes from 24 to page 27. And those are listed out for you. Won't go through those unless you want to discuss any budget attached there for your consideration for on page 28, pages 28 through 31, you have amendments to the water capital reserve and related capital project ordinance. This is simply a restated and amended resolution and restate for the water capital reserve, but also restate capital project ordinance. And you have a motion there suggested for you, but then also pages 29 to 31, you actually have the detail for the resolution. Going then into the next and final item is H, and that begins on page 34. And this is an update from our town attorney on the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, transition plan. This is an update that she provides for everyone. That's all of the consent agenda this morning.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding the consent agenda for the town manager?
Yeah, one question on the water fund, capital reserve fund. On page 28, it says the motion is to, it says related to anticipated future water fund for excuse me, for anticipated expansion for the water treatment plant expansion project. And I guess technically we haven't voted for an expansion yet. It's a
That's correct.
potential.
That's correct.
And as I read through it, it seemed some of the wording kind of anticipated that that was going to happen. I just want to make sure we're clear that it's a contingency.
That's correct. Yes. I'm I'm assuming you're referencing the second whereas there. Well, actually, it's anticipated in several places. Yes. Okay.
This was a capital project ordinance that you put in place for the water treatment plant expansion in order to land the engineering fees somewhere. And as you remember, if we keep it in the regular budget, it doesn't cross multiple years. And since this is a project that's for sure will cross several years, you felt like it was the most appropriate thing to go ahead and put it into a capital project ordinance. And so this is just to adjust it's like $1,300 overage in engineering fees, and that's all it's doing.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah, just to restate it basically with that amendment is all.
Thanks.
This doesn't reflect anything, this has nothing to do with the American Rescue Plan money, none of that. This is simply to correct the resolution previously. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? If there are none, I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ms. Costa, would you please continue with the next item, the town manager's report?
Yes, sir. Again, on page 35 of your agenda packet, we have a brief monthly report from me, just giving you an update. The summer series, what has been for July has been rescheduled to Saturday, July 30th at 6. The next section there is just to give you an update on position vacancies. We talked about this a number of times, and we all have been reading and hearing about vacancies and employment issues all across our nation. We are not immune from having difficulties with applicants and receiving enough applications for consideration. So this is just giving you an update as to where we are. As of, this was written last week, so as of today, we have 16 applications for the fire chief position. We will be having the initial interviews for some of those candidates tomorrow and Wednesday this week. So just to give you an update there. Also, Chief Davis, Interim Chief Davis has been, Interim Fire Chief Davis has been reviewing some applications that he's receiving for fire engineer and firefighter positions. And so we hope to have those remaining vacancies filled soon. As of today, I've received 2 town clerk applications. We still are looking for some folks to help us in public works. So these are seasonal positions, but they're very important to us as we go into leaf collection time and obviously summer work that needs to be done. Just to give you a very brief update, and that Dirk can say more about this later in the agenda when he's at the podium if you'd like, but just to give you an update, we are meeting with the county's new recreation director, and hope to next week, and hope to see where we are and move forward with the Greens Creek Greenway project. We're hoping to have some positive results with that meeting. And then also to update you on the grant application, if you'll recall, we submitted a grant application to Buncombe County requesting that they assist the town by funding the full amount that we had requested, $2 million roughly, for the preliminary engineering report for the water treatment plant expansion. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that grant. So hated to hear that news. Update on traffic calming, we are, at your last meeting, you asked us to bring back some recommendations with regard to traffic calming at and around Lake Louise Park, Lakeshore Drive, Lake Louise Drive. Staff has been pulling those together. We do not have a formal report for you, but we will have that for you next month. That's all from the report. Yes, sir.
Did we apply for any other funds for the vestry plan or not?
No, those are the only ones we requested. They are gonna, it is my understanding, what I read is they are gonna consider more funding of this using the county funds in 2023. So we can certainly go back to them and ask for it, ask for more or other projects. It simply has to fall within that, as you'll recall, that list of broadband infrastructure. Help me out, those of you that remember that list, so there's eight or so items.
Premium pay.
COVID-related expenses.
So it is somewhat short list of things that we can apply for. I did not see on the list, may be mistaken, but I did not see on the list any of the other municipalities that receive funds.
I did not see any either, and I know the municipalities did apply. That was disappointing. I don't know if they spent all of their ARP money or not. If they got some left for next year, perhaps they got a little bit left.
They say
think that
2023.
I think it was short-sighted. The monies, they spent a lot of money, went to the usual suspects. All of them were good suspects, but there was an opportunity to do something and made it. I think they missed the opportunity, so that's disappointing. Any other questions for the town manager? If not, we're on to item 6 on the agenda, which is general public comments. And we do have folks who have signed up to speak. And instead of reading my usual comments, since I know these two speakers, and they've already heard it before, I will skip it. But I will point out that the town manager, as you know, and the last one, has had this very alarming sounding alarm that they indicated when 3 minutes was up. And so she now has got a quieter but more visible version. So you should watch her giant clock, and there's the beep. It's a little more friendly than the one she had before. So thank you for calling something new there. So Thomas Deasy is our first person to speak.
I yield my time to Lou McNamara.
Okay, Lou McNamara.
I am Lou Acanero, 14 Fairview Lane, Weaverville, North Carolina. Again, I am Lou Acanero, and I have a right and feel it necessary to state my position tonight. 59 years ago, before I was drafted into the United States Army, I bought 160 acres in Weaverville, which I've increased to 249 acres for future development. I've invested my money, hard labor in this town by buying old buildings in Weaverville and adapting them to current use. You know them as Twisted Laurel, Hoggett Coffee, Maggie B's, Well Bread Bakery. Also, you have 5 prominent businesses leasing from down on Main Street beneath the old fire station. For the past year, I've been designing a professional 12,000 square foot medical building, which Weaverville needs. I try to fulfill the needs of Weaverville. I do not want my plans destroyed by suggestions or comments from one town council member. I have well-founded concerns that a council member is compromised by her emotional and irresponsible comments about suggesting and publishing on Facebook. I would like all the women in my life to stop for a minute, take a long, deep breath, and burn everything to the ground. End of quote. This comment rates right up there. With instigating marches, protests, and riots, burning down towns, and school shootings. It only takes one deranged person to read this comment, agree, and take action. The town of Weaverville. Caring, concerned town council members that can carry on the dream of the original founders of this town and unite us all. We do not need an emotional and mentally unbalanced woman on the town council who has little concern for our town. The town of Weaverville deserves better. The town of Weaverville cannot grow and provide the needs for our progressing times with Michelle Wood on our town council. Michelle Wood cannot unite us, and I am asking for the resignation of Michelle Wood. I never thought a moment in my life I'd ever have to stand up here and say something like this.
Dr. Love? Doug?
'73 Hillcrest Drive, Weaverville. Good evening. I'm going to just ditto some of the remarks that were made by the previous speaker. And then I'm going to go through a couple of points here. You know, through our lives, we all make mistakes. But I'm not here to talk about a mistake. I'm here to talk about a decision made and in very poor judgment, I might add. For anyone sitting on town council to make a statement that potentially incites violence is totally uncalled for, and that person needs to resign tonight. This also may be time for council to look at the town charter and put some provisions in it for a recall process. I looked into that a number of years ago, and I was kind of laughed at for suggesting it, but it's something that I think should be looked at, because right now Weaverville has no provisions for any kind of recall process, and it should be there, making it difficult, but it should be there. One other thing, anyone who gives a statement such as the one made, a thumbs up or a heart, should also not be in a position of power that affects the citizens of Weaverville. And I concur with the previous speaker. I didn't think I would ever stand up here and say anything like this. I've worked with a number of you in here and have enjoyed it and thought very highly of all of you. But tonight, I have to rethink that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman?
I would just like to say that the meme that I reposted on Facebook was widely circulated in a lot of places, is a figure of speech. I'm disappointed that the editors of the paper didn't see it as a figure of speech and made a mountain out of a molehill, which is another figure of speech, out of the comment that I reposted. Those who know me know that I have spent my entire adult life working with nonviolent training, with nonviolent programs, speaking up for social justice, and that's what I did then. I have no intention of setting anything on fire in the town of Weaverville.
Thank you. Moving on to our item 7, discussion and action items. First item up is an update from the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and Phil Barnett, who is the chairman of that committee, is here to give us an update on their work.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Barnett. We live at 22 Whitetail in Weaverville, just down Main Street. And thank you for inviting me this evening. Your Economic Development Advisory Committee has actually been operating since January. And we've taken a look at our local economy and believe that protecting our small businesses and supporting entrepreneurs working from home especially are going to be key drivers for the future of our town. We focused on coming up with some new development ideas, especially for Main Street, such as creation of new co-working spaces, which builds on our new free internet capability. And by the way, thank you very much for that. It works great for me, and I see a lot of folks using it. And it was a really nice upgrade for our town. So we're meeting now with new participants and potential investors to explore a possible co-working site in our town. And if you think about co-working, this is where there's space available that is multi-use, and folks who are working from home actually can go into a co-working space and use it, for example, as a temporary office or even a conference room. So again, we're meeting with interested parties along that line to explore where we might place such a facility, and this will be available to folks who would like to get out of their homes and actually work in a more office-like setting. So the committee has also created a new Facebook page. It's called Digital Nomads of Weaverville, in the effort to connect with potential users of this development. And we already have 67 members of this particular site. So there is interest. This is an effort to really gauge, what the market demand would be for co-working, for example. The committee is exploring actions from other small towns that have taken, actions to manage and enhance their attractiveness, to new business through a number of success stories that we found, for example, at the Center for Rural Innovation, which we call CORI. So there's about 30 towns listed on that site, and they talk about what they've done really to attract new entrepreneurs and what I would describe as desired growth. We want to thank the committee members, Summer Green, Brent Koenig, Jared Perkins, Al Schwinn, Alan Shepard, Reggie Tidwell, Chuck Thornton, Frank Tedeschi, Cindy Ward, Craig Weeks, and Terry Yeager. And we also want to thank a number of you and our staff for supporting our efforts these past 6 months, and we plan, of course, to continue on. So under our charter, to identify and support actions the town can take to enhance or support our small businesses, we want to present a motion to council this evening that was unanimously supported by the Economic Development Advisory Committee on our meeting on the 30th of last month. So, Mayor, I'm prepared to read the motion on your mark.
These are the recommendations from the Economic Development Committee.
Yes. Okay. Weaverville's Main Street is a vibrant blend of small local businesses and serves as a regional economic draw. The Economic Development Advisory Committee believes that maintaining Main Street as an area primarily for small local businesses should be an important economic goal for our town. To support this goal, the committee recommends that town council amend a table of uses to provide that all retail development in buildings of greater than 5,000 square feet in the C1 zoning district must be accomplished through conditional district zoning. It is believed that this will allow the town council to exercise the most control of the retail development along Main Street, including the consideration of aesthetics in conformity with our small town feel and the future of Weaverville's development through a new approval process. Thank you.
Any questions for Phil?
Yeah, I was just curious, Phil, what did you arrive at 5,000 square feet? I know the incident is, what was the basis for that particular figure?
So the current table is already set at 10,000. And actually reducing that by half actually gives council a little bit more touch and feel in terms of future development. So if you think about it, a 10,000 square foot, that's essentially 100 by 100. We're talking about now a commercial facility that might be 50 by 50, which would be 5,000 square feet.
And we do have some two-story buildings on the west side of the street.
Right?
So if we had one on the right side, it'd be 2,500 square feet for.
If you for the two.
Yeah, two-story.
So would it be for business and not necessarily for?
Everyone will speak directly into the microphones, please.
Yours is not open.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Cornell, you
I was saying maybe the 5,000 would be per business, like because if there is something that has two stories, it's not necessarily the same business on each floor.
that's correct.
But you're saying if it was the same business on both floors and it was more than 5,000 square feet, it would, I wrote down these words, be considered via conditional zoning.
So basically what I'm saying is that if it was greater than 5,000 square feet, it would, this council would have to approve that construction. So it's not inhibiting it, but it is requiring a conditional zoning district, which would require town council to approve it if it was more than 5,000 square feet.
And Phil, where does it begin and end at, as far as the Main Street in your proposal?
The C1 district.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And again, C1 is for simplicity. I think trying to subdivide that, just creates more complexity.
And Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only C1 district we have is essentially downtown only.
It's from Alamo to here, or does it go to right?
One or two properties further south.
So this would only affect that area.
Can we not, in a previous meeting, see a list of buildings that we can?
It's workshop.
Workshop.
This is a recommendation to town council. And yes, and at this point, it was discussed at your last workshop with your joint meeting with the planning board. It is on a priority list. I think you ranked that as #1 priority. So at this point, it will go back through. It'll be up to staff to bring that forward through the planning board and back to you through a normal text amendment process. You'll have plenty of opportunities to, as will the planning board, to really vet that option and see if we could fine tune the vet and make it strong.
Any questions?
Is 5,000 too large? And the only reason I bring it up, I think if let's face it, if the agenda is to put a filter on the big box stores, I know in the past, like Apple taken around with a boutique retail frontage that they kind of abandoned later. But, it's always possible you can have large chains that can then play with the formula under that. Or, I want to be careful that we're not setting the bar on the gray areas.
I think when you go back to the list that we looked at the meeting last week, it's pretty, 5,000 is pretty good, but we'll have a chance.
I think about our largest buildings currently are about 5,000 square feet. There's a couple things that might exceed it, but not by much. So so we can have any building bigger than what we currently have on Main Street from being built unless we approve it. And so I think that's what the 5,000 figure came up with, was that basically it was built around the largest buildings that we currently have. Am I accurate in that, James?
As well as an aggregate and an average of some small box retail establishments.
No other questions. Thank you very much for your recommendations, Bill. And it's next place, the next step will be to go to the planning board.
Wonderful, thank you. And our next meeting is this coming Thursday at our beautiful community center, 1 to 3. Please join us if you can.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next is item B, an update from our town's MSD representative, Mr. Jervis.
Good evening. I've been your representative on the MSD board since the first of the year. And Patrick has asked me just to give a brief update and entertain any concerns or questions you might have. Those of you who have been around here for a while kind of know the background. This system, the MSD system, Metropolitan Sewage District, was formed in the mid-60s. It was basically an amalgamation of a bunch of little compacted municipal and county systems that were all kind of kludged together. And it's been a very successful operation since then, I believe. The board currently consists of 14 members. It meets every month on the third Wednesday of the month at MSD headquarters at 2 p.m. Anybody's interested. There's a provision for guests attending, participating in conversations. So the current 14 members are allotted in this way. 3 represent Asheville, 3 represent Madison, Butler County, 1 each from the municipalities of Weaverville, Woodfin, Black Mountain, and Montreat, plus the Woodfin Water District. Also, there are 2 members from Henderson County, basically what's known as the Cane Creek District, which is kind of the northern part of that county, which was brought into the MSD system a few years ago. The current chair is Jerry Devon, mayor of Woodfin. He was just re-elected last week to another 1-year term. Glenn Kelly from Biltmore Forest is the vice chair. My sense is both of those have been in place for quite some time. The board also has 5 standing committees, including members of the board, some members of the board in each of them. Planning, personnel, finance, capital improvement program, and right-of-way committees. I'm a member of the personnel and planning committees. The budget, which was just approved 2 months ago for the current FY, is right up against 60 million, 59.85 million. Current staffing as of today is 152. That number reflects a bit marginally from time to time, which I think is understandable. Typically, the fluctuation tends to be at the lower end of the food chain. The general manager is Tom Hardy. He's been in that position for over 20 years. Just this week, we have the personnel committee evaluated him and recommended a renewal of his 4-year contract through 2026, and the board supported that decision last week. There, in terms of local interest, there are 4 projects that have just recently been accepted into the MSD system. Those are Amber's Chase, which is out Prince Creek, just across from Miller Cove. The project known as 828 North, which is the new apartment complex on Garrison Road. The project known as Northridge Retail, which essentially is Hobby Lobby and Marshalls. And then a very small project called Holston Extension, which is just a minor add-on to the Holston apartment complex that's next door there. There are two planned developments in works that you're aware of. One is Palisades at Rents Creek, which is 132 units on Merriman Avenue, just below the lake. And Greenwood Park Phase 2, and what we affectionately know as Northland, which is 25 units. Do you have any other questions or concerns?
No, thank you very much for doing a good job representing. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. The next item on our agenda is item C, code amendments for outdoor lighting regulations, which we had a public hearing on at the beginning of this meeting. I'm calling the planning director and to remind us about these code amendments.
So one of the last remaining priorities of this iteration of your comprehensive land use plan called for a simplification of the outdoor lighting ordinance. The reason for that, the existing ordinance is incredibly technical in nature. While I consider myself to be an educated person, I must admit I don't know what lumens or foot candles or any of that is. We're stripping a lot of that away and opting for a vastly more simplified version of the ordinance. Of course, happy to answer any questions you may have. Having held the public hearing, which was duly advertised, and having received the recommendation from your planning board, which is again a unanimous favorable recommendation, action is eligible at this time. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. We discussed this earlier, had a public hearing earlier in this meeting as well. Is there a motion to accept the ordinance amending our code chapter 20 regarding outdoor lighting regulations?
Well, I've got one question.
Sure.
James, what's the intent around businesses that are lit up at night? Like, how does that fall in, or how does that fall into regulations? I noticed a couple newer businesses, that seem to have, outside of their operating hours, like Wagmar comes to mind. It's very bright all the time.
So I will address that question a couple ways. There's an important distinction here, that being pre and post-construction. Pre-construction is going to be basically the same because this revised version of the ordinance still calls for a lighting plan for certain forms of development that have to be approved. What we've done over the previous years is actually have that plan submitted by Duke Energy, and as evidence submitted to staff that the plan that's going to be implemented with the project conforms with the town's lighting ordinance. That will remain in place here. I would say the biggest difference between your existing ordinance and what is being proposed is a much more simplified version of the ordinance, and that eases post-construction complaints. Previously, we had the lumens and the foot candles that I mentioned earlier. It actually called for light measurement techniques that simply had never been done. We never purchased a lighting meter, even though the ordinance said that was what I was required to do. Pre-construction is going to be roughly the same. Post-construction vastly simplifies enforcement efforts.
What are we gonna do when we get a complaint because somebody, is luminarying at twice the amount of what should be, and now we've taken luminaries out of here, and we don't have a piece of equipment? I mean, I've used the piece of equipment before, so I know how it works, but not everybody does, I understand.
I would say similar to the noise ordinance that you've heard recently, we'll hear a little bit later this evening. We're concentrating more on keeping the noise and or the light on the property where it originates, rather than it leaving the property boundaries. There's a lot of complications similar to a noise meter and a light meter, where you take those measurements, how far away you are from the light source, whether you cross the property line, so on and so forth. This just says, make every reasonable effort to make sure that your light remains your own.
One example that I can think of, that I've seen in other towns where there has been complaints. For example, some people want to decorate really big for Christmas.
Sure.
It's not necessarily going to leave their property, but it might light up the world.
Never gonna get away from everything. Yes, sir.
How does this affect the events over here, like the 4th of July, where we have these large lights? Is there an exception for that, we have the ones up on the high?
Yes, there are some exceptions in here for governmental activities, for lack of a better term, emergencies, things of that nature. Plus, those events are subject to the town special event permits. And if there needs to be some language specific to the event, we certainly can address things from that angle as well.
Councilmember Cordell, one of your question, how do we fix this if it doesn't fully address the concerns? Anytime that you've got an ordinance that is not working, you can certainly bring that back and have, take it in a different direction should town council wish to. So if this simplification of the ordinance is leaving some gaps and we need to put in something more restrictive or more just more provisions to address it, you certainly can do that in the future.
Are there any other questions for the planning director regarding the ordinance, the code amendments on outdoor lighting? If not, is there a motion to make such changes?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Next item is item D, code amendments on noise regulations. You will recall that a few months back, we did set, we have to update our noise regulations at that point. I'm calling the attorney to give us a modification of those at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. In February of this year, you did enact a substantial revision to your noise ordinance provisions. This is a good example, I think, of what, seeing how some ordinance provisions play out and needing to fine tune them. We have gotten some feedback that is allowing staff to take a look at the provisions that we have in place in order to continue to try to find that balance between a reasonable commercial level of activity for our commercial areas, especially as they abut residential areas. So I've been working with the town manager, police department, and our code enforcement officers over a period of really about a month on some amendments that we think will further clarify the provisions regarding amplified sound and to provide for some better enforceability through the imposition of a tiered approach towards the civil penalties. You've got an ordinance amending Weaverville Town Code Chapter 9 concerning noise regulations. And just want to, the big change regarding amplified sound is that anything after 10 o'clock, again, we haven't changed the time period, but so 10 o'clock is the beginning of our nighttime hours. After that period, if there's amplified sound that is found by an investigating officer to be going off of the property, emanating outside of the property boundary, either by sound or by feel, then that is a violation. And what this is going to allow our officers to do is to go in the street or the sidewalk off of the property for any violating property. And this applies across the board, residential areas, commercial areas. It allows them to, if they can hear it, then they can find a violation if it's after 10. What this does allow is that if somebody has amplified sound inside walls that are not emanating outside of the property boundaries, that's not a problem. Because again, it's not a noise situation that's going to affect any of the neighborhood. The other there's a couple just other provisions that we put in here. One is making it clear that an owner, a property owner, is responsible for their tenants or visitors on their property. So we can hold someone accountable, a property owner accountable for what's happening on their property. And then also the penalties and enforcement. Previously, we just had that subject to the normal civil penalty, which is $100. We felt like that was probably, we needed to escalate that a little bit for repeat violators. And so you see $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, $500 for the third, and $1,000 per offense after that. It can also, if we really have a problem property, we still have the ability to apply to the court to get an injunction to prevent them from carrying on any activity that would be a violation. So that still is in place, but we've restated it. Don't think I'm overstating this by saying that your staff recommends these amendments, again, in order to continue to tighten up that noise ordinance.
What questions y'all have for the attorney?
I have a question for Chief. This, or the way it's written now, it doesn't tell me how you're gonna measure it. So when the officer shows up, how's he gonna measure the noise that's outside of the perimeter of the residence or the business? He or she, sorry.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Just to clarify, answer your question, the officer does go to all of these complaints as they normally do. The officer bears account that there's a reasonableness behind it. There's also body camera footage that also has several microphones on it that's recorded. That is left up to the discretion of the officer and the witness or whoever's complaining that wants to act in tandem to bring this complaint forward. Typically, those are handled on a case-by-case basis and they're resolved at the time. I don't know if that answers your question.
Is there always a body camera? So there
Yes.
should be a recording?
Yes, it's recorded as evidence. It doesn't record levels, it records as evidence to verify that there was a complaint, yes.
So if our officer stood across the street from a plane, his device would record it. In fact,
That's correct. All police and citizen interactions are recorded.
And it just says if it can be heard or felt. It really doesn't require them to measure it.
That's correct.
Any other questions about the proposed amendments to the noise ordinance? If not, I entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance amending the town noise regulations.
I'll move that we adopt it as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Next item is item E, personnel policy amendments, and town manager Coffee, can you describe those to us?
Certainly, thank you. If you will take a look at page 48 of your agenda packet, you will see early in that summary sheet there, the three bullets that this is correct, that these recommendations are focused on. The first of which you heard about during the budget process, and that is to provide for a 14-day overtime calculation for non-exempt employees within the police and fire departments, as opposed to the 28-day overtime that they were previously, that we were previously using. You did approve this in the budget. It was, you may recall, it was the $10,000 that you approved to be added to the budget. The second item is the opportunity for a name clearing hearing for employees that are demoted or dismissed. And this is being recommended by our town attorney for legal compliance. And then finally, recommending a revision to the holiday leave section of the personnel policy for the addition of Juneteenth, which is consistent with Buncombe County and all of the municipalities at this point in the county, with the exception of Biltmore Forest, who plans to take this up when they typically review holidays, which is in December. We have done had some listserv questions that have come across both my manager's listserv across the state, as well as the town clerk, which James Eller has seen. And so the vast majority of jurisdictions are going with adding the Juneteenth holiday. So these are the recommendations for approval tonight. You may have questions, I did, of Jennifer regarding the name clearing hearing. It's very new and fairly nuanced as well. So if you have questions, she will be happy to answer those questions.
What questions do you members have of the attorney?
Well, let me skip the Juneteenth, because that'll be simpler. why not only have 2 days for Christmas? Why do we think it's necessary to add? So we're going to 13 paid holidays, is that right? 2, 4, 6.
That is what is currently, yes. This is simply an addition. If town council wishes to change that, certainly.
So that, yeah, that's just my opinion. I'd rather see us take one away at Christmas, not add another paid holiday.
And I also looked at it from the point of view of a lot of companies that I've worked for in the past don't actually give Good Friday. So I did research, and yes, North Carolina is a state where government's required to do Good Friday. So I think there's 10 states that Good Friday is a holiday. Also, the research showed that 24 states in the United States are currently doing Juneteenth. So roughly half. That's just information.
Any other questions about this, about any of these? There's 3 items to this, this discussion. Are there any questions for town hearing on this item or the name clearing?
So the question about the total number of holidays that we have, how does that line up with other municipalities? Like you mentioned Juneteenth, everyone else doing it, but is the total list or the total number equivalent?
I would say it varies. I think the majority probably, I would have to, I don't want to misspeak, but the last time that I had conversations with the other managers about these holidays, they went with the state holiday system, which is what we are going with. This is what was approved, what, three years ago, to follow the state holiday schedule. And that is what we've been following since that time.
Any other questions? Comments? One option would be if you wanted to, if people felt that they want to support Andrew's Nagel's suggestions, we could make a motion to accept the holiday, but also change the Christmas holidays as he suggested. That would be up to anyone who wanted to make such a motion.
So just counting this, I pulled this data real quick just to verify what Selena said. It does, the state holidays are listed the same, and 2 in Thanksgiving and 3 in Christmas. It's all one set of them. So I'm guessing they're gonna.
That's what I hear, but
But they have a
I haven't
policy.
seen the
They
final
have a
message.
policy.
I hate to complain, but we still can't hear something.
If everyone, please try to speak into the microphones. Is everyone's mic on?
My apologies, that's the first, but I must be tired tonight. So what I asked the manager was, I pulled up the state holiday schedule and they do from 2021, they have not published their 2022, but just to verify that there are 12 existing state holidays, 3, the group list, but 3 at Christmas and 2 at Thanksgiving. So an easy way is to follow the state holidays, then we're in step with them, but if they haven't published it yet.
Right.
And we passed Juneteenth. So that may be a logical suggestion is, if we're gonna do it, and then you don't have to change it every time, do you reword it to follow the state holiday?
Because
I was just
if
thinking
they
that.
don't pass it, then
Then
we're over.
I would rather see. Yeah, it makes it easy to go, we're gonna follow the state holiday schedule.
Right. Sure.
And whatever the state legislature passes, then we follow that.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a reasonable.
That's a good reasonable solution to this. I just gotta say, I know that this land will be in the way of me, but I really think that, it'd be nice if we had the opportunity to ditch the designated holidays and designated sick day system, which is really antique and no one does it except state government. But in environment, that would be asking the state to move the mountains, so I won't do so right now. If we had the option of adopting a paid time off system, PTO, common for you, where employees actually got the freedom to decide which holidays they're going to celebrate themselves and when they were going to take off sick, that would be an improvement both for us as trying to administer this policy, personal policy and for the employees, but I know I'm speaking to the wall here, so
It might be hard for the managers though. People get to decide what day they want to take off.
It sounds like you all have reached a consensus here to approve this,
Change the call state holidays.
but to approve the other two items.
Well, I have a question about that.
Okay, sorry.
Well, can we,
We need a motion to accept it. Andrew, would you make a motion?
let me just offer this as I think where you're headed on the holidays. And that is Article 7, Section 2, subparagraph A is amended to note that the town will follow the state holiday schedule each year. So that becomes, you've got a resolution in your packet that we're attempting to accomplish those three things. And so this would be under subparagraph 1D. So I've got that amendment for that resolution. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
She's gonna replace 1DA, the town provides paid holidays each calendar year for eligible employees recognized as, instead of saying the following holidays.
We're gonna follow the state holiday.
It makes it simple. Sorry, man. I just wanted some clarification, because this name clearing hearing is new
It's
to me.
confusing.
So, I'm
So let me explain.
No, let me ask you a question first. So, in the state of North Carolina, I'm allowed to part company with somebody. And I actually don't have to give a reason. But if I don't document a reason, and it's not necessarily for cause, we go, you're just not a good fit. If we go, so I can terminate that, no problem. And I'm not disparaging them and said it's because it's not a good fit. But they would be able to draw probably unemployment, based on my experience. The private world, you go to the unemployment here, you go, it didn't work out. You go, well, they worked for you for 20 years, didn't work out, we're gonna give them unemployment. Or, no, he stole from us, and there's a real cause here, and there's actually a police report, he was convicted, and he stole from us, and we're parting company for that. Is that when a name clearing hearing might come in and go, no, I didn't steal, Chief Davis was wrong, the courts stink, I did not steal from you, it was my cousin Larry. So, how do you?
Yes, it's only when the whole reason for this is that in the public sector world, the letter of dismissal or demotion is a public record.
Okay.
And so that can have some negative or stigmatizing information in it that is public record. And so what this does, it's a federal court has ruled that under due process reasons, that's a liberty or property interest that should have a due process hearing. And this is not to go back and rehash the decision, but it's an optional hearing that an employee can call and invite the media or members of the public in to hear that employee's side of the story. That's it.
Now, I'm confused because all the time we talk about personnel issues, we say they're not public and we go into private.
The final decision is public.
The final decision is public, so not their personnel file.
Just the one.
So there goes, I'm firing Andrew because his cousin Larry stole stuff. And
Yes.
that becomes public record.
Yes, sir.
And then you could have the hearing.
To say, no, it wasn't my cousin Larry, it was my brother Darrell. My brother Darrell. I didn't do it, chief, it wasn't me.
You could attempt to clear Larry's name.
Okay. Doesn't sound like good luck with it.
It's this is a federal requirement. Most folks are trying to start adding that into their policies, and that is my recommendation as your attorney to
Any other questions? Any other questions on the item? If not, is there a motion to accept the resolution, which includes the amendment or the change made to the holiday schedule so that we will reflect the state holiday schedule?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Next item is item F, remote and hybrid public meetings and repeal of the emergency declaration. And just to keep, remind you all, we've been operating under public hearing regulations that states that as a part of their emergency declaration, which has now been expired. I hope I voiced that correctly.
Not quite. Couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
August 15th.
Thank you. Let's see, this is you.
See what you can tell next to.
That's right.
So thank you for that intro, and that is probably better than I could say, but basically in February of 2022, you adopted on page 53, the resolution that authorized you to have remote and hybrid public meetings during periods of emergency. Essentially, since the governor's emergency declaration is expected to expire on August 15th, then we need to bring this back to you. And actually, you have a copy of the legislation, General Statute 166A on pages 54 and 55 as well. And essentially what we need to do with this declaration expiring in a couple of weeks is we need to come to you and ask you how you would like to proceed with regard to remote and hybrid meetings. So we have, as you know, we are recording the meetings. These meetings are published on our YouTube channel at the latest the next day after the meeting. And so they are out there. They are not on YouTube. That is not our only form. That is not our primary record, but they are there so that anyone can view those in their entirety, with the exception of closed sessions. So the question before you tonight, and we'd like to have your discussion and direction, is whether you would like to proceed with remote and hybrid, that portion. We're not suggesting that we are going to discontinue recording meetings and publishing them, but we do need some direction as we prepare for the end of the governor's order.
Just for clarification, would this affect if one individual tonight would be at the meeting, they be participating?
No, sir.
They would not be able.
They would not be able to participate.
We make changes.
And how does that affect us with, so let's say I'm on a business trip, somebody else is sick, do we have enough people? What's that quorum number?
Should be 4. You have to have, no, it's just it's a majority, so you have to have 4 in order to have a legal meeting. So as long as 4 of you are in person, you're set. You can have a meeting, you can vote on any action that comes before you. What is becoming pretty clear is that right now there's not authority for you to participate remotely after this emergency order expires. It doesn't say you can't continue to stream your meetings. We can do that if you wish to. We certainly will continue to record them and have them available after the fact. But the problem comes when you have one of your members, one or more of your members that are attending remotely. That's the authority that we don't. I share Fred Bluestein's opinion with the School of Government that there's just not legal authority to do that. I frankly think that will get fixed over time, but right now we don't have that authority. And so if we continue with remote participation from town council, it calls into question your quorum issues and then your voting issues.
Those are good points, but I would say that I think most all municipalities, all governments across the state have adopted these type of policies during the pandemic, and we're all have to deal with this issue, and that's going to motivate the state to come up with some kind of authority soon, I suspect. So I would be hesitant to, after we've already initiated and made available to the public and to us as well, a way to participate remotely. I think it would be challenging and confusing to remove that option at this point. Since we probably can anticipate the state will be providing some type of authority to do so in the future, probably in the near future, I bet.
I agree with the mayor. So Catherine travels, I travel, you know, a lot of people travel. So I like the idea of leaving it streaming because I may want to listen. I can't vote though. So you go, okay. So whether it's me or the general public to go, you know, I'm not allowed to vote. Am I allowed to comment? Would it be better if I didn't comment? So I think work through some of those things that if one of us was not in town, we wanted to.
Listen in.
Well, yeah, and I can obviously listen in if it's live, pretending to be a citizen, but, you know, would it push the boundaries then if when the mayor says anything on comments, you go, well, you're really not in the meeting, so you shouldn't comment. So I think we just probably should come up with some clarifications on how best we do that so we don't screw up, but it sounds like we really don't have a choice. But if I was out of town, I would still prefer it to be streamed live, not watch it the next day. And if you could clarify if I allowed to run my big mouth, that would be great.
Yeah, from my perspective, I can't see going backwards. I mean, the rest of the world isn't. The public sector or the private sector is virtual to stay. And there's a lot of practical reasons why we would want one of us traveling to be able to log in. I mean, let's say we get sick, you know, we're all very hypersensitive to getting sick now, even if you're not tested COVID. So does that mean I'm pulling myself out of an important decision? You know, as we get a younger demographic on council that's still in their careers, they're traveling. They're in important jobs where I want to say every time you can't schedule around it, you just can't vote. I mean, it just wouldn't seem to make sense from a practical standpoint, especially if the state's going to probably fix it anyway. You know, I'd like to see us just continue to push through it, come up with whatever process we need to.
But what I'm hearing you say, and what we're reading, is that we can't really continue to act this way until the state does put something new into effect. I mean, we kind of have to cease and desist for right now.
So a little bit, you're a little bit right. If this meeting right now, all 7 of you are in person, this is streaming live and is being recorded. I don't have any problem in the world with what's happening right now.
But next
month when you're out of town and Jeff's sick, and you want to participate, and can't be here in the room present with us, that's the participation that is not, there's really no authority for that.
So we can put test pace.
That's right. So
We can push the boundaries and let somebody sue us and say it was leaving.
It's certainly your.
Clint's leading that charge.
So there's no authority to continue to do it, because there's no directive not to do it either.
What I would say is that if the folks that are via Zoom, the town council members that are Zoom, if they're voting members, voting on matters before the board, I think there's a risk. And so that would, if you've got 3 people here, 4 people Zoom, you don't have a quorum in the room to actually hold a meeting. That's questionable. And so those 2 issues are, I think that by and large, you've got the majority of you here. It's usually 1, maybe 2, that are not here at any point. And I think if there's an understanding that those members that are not present in the room are going to be on there to listen, maybe offer a comment, but not to vote, I think that I'm certainly comfortable leaning towards that.
So we have to have a challenge though at the end of the day to the legitimacy of it, correct? If we push forward and said nothing's changed, we're going to operate as we have, there would have to be a formal challenge to the legitimacy of those people, correct?
There would, but I'll tell you, every decision that you make affects somebody pretty significantly. Your noise ordinance, I'm going to pick on that. you don't want that challenge, because then every noise complaint that you have is, there's no enforcement mechanism that you can really rely on, because the ordinance could be, that amendment could be struck down.
I understand the risk you're presenting, but it's also true that in that situation, we have to have multiple votes by Zoom. If it's just one person, it's not going to, probably in most cases, it's not going to make a difference anyway, because you have a vote that would have a majority.
What she's saying at the meeting is that it's what happened when we didn't vote properly. When I was in one meeting, and we didn't do a roll call vote, then we were, that whole meeting, everything we did in that meeting was, we did it in a consent agenda, and we fixed it. So that's your fear of, we're voting on things passing, there'll be a legal challenge. And then you go, well, we lost that in the North Carolina Supreme Court 10 years from now, and everything we've done for the last 10 years is null and void. I don't like it, I agree with you too, but I don't know that it's worth the risk, and I like risk to be the trendsetter here.
Can we just maybe the language is here, but can we say something like, once something's established statewide, we have the option to reinstate it, so that will liken the benefits of it.
Absolutely. As soon as there's movement on that, we will certainly be bringing that back to you. But I think in the interim, and I think maybe I'm hearing a consensus, but I don't want to get out in front of you. I think the consensus is that we're going to continue to stream, we're going to continue to record, so that that's available for the public to see after the fact. And the streaming would allow one or more of you that cannot be physically in the room to join in some fashion, to at least listen, maybe offer some comment, but maybe not vote.
But that would mean that what you're suggesting would still exclude the Zooming participation by a member if they weren't there. So I'm not sure how you do that consensus, because I don't agree with that. I would say that you still continue Zoom if you really want to make sure to address your risk concern. We could say that members participating via Zoom can't vote.
That's what we're trying to say.
Saying the same thing.
No, you're saying streaming is not the same as Zooming.
Yeah, streaming is, yes.
Fix the word.
Fix the word. Well, not just watch. Well, I want the ability to make sure our members can participate, not just watch. And when you say streaming, that implies you're just watching. Fine.
But are you suggesting vote as well?
No, I would, but I think I'm hearing that there's concerns about the risk of the validity of those votes. So what we say is members participating via Zoom cannot vote.
So is there value in our having some type of public statement that we support moving forward with full virtual capability? Because again, boards of directors of companies are doing it. Nobody's turning back. And if the state's thinking this is a jump ball, and we may do it, may not.
Then we should write a resolution to John Ager, and I think it's John for us, or we should put him and Brian Turner together, but yeah, we should write. Just like we tried with the 400 gallons a day, and that got nowhere, we should write an official thing on. We would encourage you to pass the legislation quickly, that we don't want to take a step backwards and kind of work that out.
If everybody supported on that.
We ask our state representatives to proceed with getting this thing fixed, which probably wouldn't happen until their session begins in September, I think.
I agree that we should ask, but I personally, if I'm going to be Zooming, I will not be voting. Because I don't feel like it's legal. So I'm going to do it.
Well, we got to be careful, because if we don't fix this, it doesn't matter if you vote. I think what Jennifer said, then it's an illegal meeting.
Right.
So we do need, and I think you need consensus.
So there would, is there consensus on the idea that we will continue doing, have to go under, but if a member is participating via Zoom, they will not have voting options?
I'm in favor. Let's do a show of hands.
Everybody good? We're good with this? All right, there you go.
Would you like, just to follow up on the resolution asking for the legislature to take that up, would you like us to draft something and see what your
Yes,
next
please.
agenda?
Thank you all. Your time.
Mr. Mayor, there is a declaration of state of emergency out there that is, that former Mayor Root put into place. Would you like to just go ahead and formally know that you are formally repealing that, just put it in the minutes and that's done.
Does our emergency declaration allow for zooming and? See, I was almost never through them.
You're gonna lose it when you hang it out on the 15th.
All right. Does everyone understand that our own personal emergency declaration will also expire with the state's expiration on August 15th? Everybody good with that?
Yes.
All right, good.
Never to happen again.
Darn.
It's only been 2 weeks.
All right, that's right, 2 weeks to back happen. Next item is item G, a report from a finance director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Fiscal year 2022 is closed out with no big surprises. Financial statements are currently under audit. Our auditors will be here next week, Monday through Friday, August 1st through the 5th, to conduct their work, and then they will come back at one of your meetings in the fall to present their findings to you, probably your October meeting. But as part of the audit, the auditor usually asks to meet with the mayor and one council member, so I'll be reaching out to you next week to schedule that. On page 57 in your agenda, I put together a summary of some revenues. These are unaudited numbers. There might be some slight changes as a result of the audit from year-end accruals and such. But you'll see that across the board, our actual numbers are higher than the budget. If you look at the third column, the variance column, that's our actual over budget for each of the major revenue sources. And you'll see that totals about 1.1 million. 780,000 of that's the general fund, and those bottom two will be in the water fund. And then the final column, I looked at the prior year compared to FY22, and you'll see that our revenues increased across all of those revenue sources, except for DMV, which is one of our smaller revenue sources, and system development fees, which is also one of the smaller ones. So across the board, our revenues went up very nicely. Below the table are some other items of note for FY22. We had funds budgeted for the paving program that did not happen in FY22, so part of what you approved tonight in that budget amendment was reappropriating that into this year's budget. So those funds went into fund balance at June 30th. We're going to pull them forward into this year's balance, combine it with what's in our current budget, so we'll have about $1 million to spend on paving this year. Cops for Kids, we collected just over 17,000, which was about 1,900 less than the year before that, but still a good number. Community center donations came in at 26,000. Community center rental fees, 29,000. We were pleasantly surprised by this number. We didn't really know what to expect, but it was higher than we had anticipated. There has been a lot of demand for that use of the community center. And then parking enforcement fees came in at just over $4,300, which we don't budget that, but that again just goes into fund balance. And then grant funding for the year, we just had the two grants, the American Rescue Plan. The first half came in this time last year. We anticipate the second half coming in any day now. And the Land of Sky Wi-Fi award at $42,000. Was our only other grant source for the year. On page 58 is the recreation complex of the community center. If you recall, the building and construction phase closed out in February of 2022. So about $550,000 transferred from general fund to that project in FY22. So that will be coming out of fund balance. And once we have better cost estimates for the recreation complex, we'll be bringing this to you and asking you to amend this to reflect the updated cost for phase 2 of that recreation complex. On page 59 is the water treatment plant capital project fund. This is the one you were asking about earlier. If you look all the way to the right, that remaining balance, you see a negative 1379.88. That was the reason we needed that budget amendment that you approved earlier, was to get rid of that negative balance, and that came as a result of engineering fees coming in over budget. So at this point, there's nothing left there's no balance remaining in this project until you amend it. So nothing else can be spent towards expanding the water treatment plant until you approve it. On page 59 is the capital project fund the grant project fund that you established for the ARP funds. So you'll see all of that remains unspent, total $1.283 million. Again, we expect to receive the second half of that any day. And just as a reminder, those funds must be obligated by December 31st of 2024. So we've got just over 2 years to have those funds obligated. And then 2 years beyond that, they have to be spent. That's a hard deadline. Those funds have to be expended by December 31st of 2026.
And we're not allowed to give council a raise.
Don't believe so. I think our last,
I've tried that before.
our last attempt at getting your raise.
Or an offset.
Well, this is federal money, so,
And my $5 an hour is not going to me, not going very far.
What questions does anyone have for finance director?
Great job.
Yes,
Thank you. My next item is item 8, our quarterly report from our planning director, James.
First thing I'd like to do is touch upon the permitting numbers. You'll see here that 34 zoning permits were issued in April, May, and June of this year. As a friendly reminder of the amount of activity that we've had going on for a few years now, we're on pace to hit 120 total permits again for, I think, the 4th year running. Back in 2014, when the town still had the ETJ, we only did around 40. So there continues to be a lot of activity going on. The planning board reviewed several text amendments and zoning map amendments in the previous 3 months as well. We have the solar collector regulations, the sidewalk waivers, a minor technical change, and of course the outdoor lighting that came forward this evening. Two zoning amendments were related to the conditional district for Duke Energy along Aiken Road, as well as the R3 initial zoning of the Hollywood project. Board of Adjustment held one meeting during this time. They saw variance applications for a front yard setback variance and a lot width variance. Both of those were granted. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Anyone have any questions for the planning director? Thank you, sir. We do have an item to discuss with our attorney, and Jackson, can you give us a motion for that? Motion for that purpose?
Yes, sir. A motion to go into closed session under North Carolina General Statute Section 143-318, 111A3, in order to consult with an attorney retained or employed by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which is hereby acknowledged, and to consider and give instructions to an attorney concerning handling or settlement of a claim or judicial action.
Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Thank you. Motion passes. Everybody will meet in the conference room in a few minutes.
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Any
Thank
building on Main Street?
Just one
Yeah. I just want to
I need to get the camera on. Oh, I've got it. I got it, yep.
Poor little kids that I can child that used to go see in libraries. So I only
What are you ready to do right
when I'm ready to really gamble.
We're good? Would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.
So I gotta get back in.
Good night, everybody. Good night.